I think the consumer experience for everything is about to get upended. Like, I am really actually bullish on consumer tech. Enterprise, it's hard. There's like 50 companies in every category. It's hard to make sense of it. I think there's gonna be this huge delta into like the top 1% of startups are gonna be insanely well ran, and they're gonna like scale, and they're gonna build defensible moats really fast. And they're gonna be deep and interesting moats. And then there's gonna be like a really gap between them and everyone else.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of AI Without Borders, a podcast showcasing the contribution of Latin Americans in the global AI space. I'm thrilled to have Vanessa Larco as our first investor guest. Vanessa is an expert in product, having held senior product management roles at Xbox, Twilio, and Box. She has been a partner at NEA, one of the leading venture capital funds globally, and was a former founder of a gaming company. But most importantly for this podcast, Vanessa has deep roots in Latin America. Her mother is from Colombia, and she has a strong connection to the Latin culture, having been born and raised in Miami. Vanessa, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be on here.
So maybe starting from the beginning, you come from a very entrepreneurial family, both your mother and your brother. How did that shape you? And it's being born into an entrepreneurial family, something that you look for when investing in founders?
It's definitely affected me. I will say that much. I growing up, I didn't even know there was a path that you would like go work somewhere and work there forever. It just wasn't, I had no examples of that. Miami's just a very entrepreneurial city. Around our dinner table, it was my mom's companies, and she would build companies and sell them and then build the next one. And we would help her. She worked Monday through Sunday. We would hang out with her at the office. We played all kinds of games in her office. It was always just part of how it worked. And we'd see her take risks, and we saw the amount of hustle and dedication and focus it would take to make these things happen. She would share with us the ups and the downs and everything in between all the time. So it's all I really knew until I went to college and then got an internship at a big company. And then I was like, oh, people can get jobs after college at a company, that they'll make payroll every 2 weeks, like no question. So it definitely affected me. And I think like any independent thinker, there was a bit of rebelliousness. I was like, well, I'm not going to do what she did. I'm going to chart my own path. If you're like 2 years at Microsoft, you're like, okay, no, I want to be able to take risks. I want to be able to make some decisions. I want to be able to learn and iterate faster. And then like the entrepreneurial bug set in. And I was like, yeah, I think that's entrepreneurship is more me rather than like big giant company.
Maybe jumping gears. So you have an extensive product management experience. How do you think AI will change or not the role of PMs? And are you already seeing an impact on your friends in the industry?
I think my friends wish there was more of an impact in the industry for product, because I was talking to someone today. I'm like, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't really work yet. And there is so much of our job that is like taking some information from this document to translate it for this other audience. So like rejiggering it to then republish it for this other thing. And then you take the same thing to train customer support, but they need it in a different format with different FAQs. And so like, there's a lot of busy work and rework. And like, if we could just trim a lot of that down, that'd be great. It's just not quite there yet. But in an ideal world where a lot of this stuff does work the way it's supposed to, I think it'll take off a lot of the like task management stuff for PMs. I think it'll take away a lot of what we do is like information comes in from a lot of sources, sales, customers, blah, blah, blah. We have to like distill it and prioritize it and translate that into roadmap items and then communicate. And then when it gets built or whatever we're building, then train the rest of the company on the thing that we're building so that everybody knows what we're building, how it works, so they can sell it, they can support it, they can, market it, all the things. And so all of this stuff can be so much, you can take on and actually synthesize more data and get to better things if you have help from AI, which I think it can do that. The things I don't think AI can do is customer interviews. It's empathizing with the customer, sitting with them, seeing what they're doing, what's working, what's not working, where's their pain points, right? I don't know that a customer would be like, yes, sure, you can have your agent just record everything I do and then tell you what software to build. Like, I think that still stretches beyond the capabilities. I think getting everyone on the team aligned to build the thing that customers really need is still a skill that's like a human to human. How do you lead without influence? How do you motivate people when they're less motivated? Like, all of those things are very human things we do as PMs. And I don't know how a bot would take that place. But I do think it'll free up product to be able to do more strategy. I think one of my biggest issues with product is that I thought when I was going to become a PM, or I thought that if I became more senior, I would do more strategy. And like, that never happened. I just got more senior and I had different fire drills, but I was always in a fire drill. I would be like, I do strategy maybe like 2% of the time, and 98% of the time I'm just dealing with fire drills. And so I think if we could even do 50-50, like 50% fire drills, 50% strategy, that job becomes so much more interesting. So I hope so, but we're nowhere near that yet.
Yeah, the promise and the reality are very different, although remain very bullish long term. And one of the areas that I've kind of been hearing a lot in the past maybe 3 months is you have the bold that Deb and the lovables have their great spikes in revenue, 0 to 20 million, 0 to 30 million, and a certain part of their pitch revolves around like, helping people build faster that are not necessarily technical. And part of their pitch is targeted at product management. Like, the product person is going to be able to do that prototype much faster and get a kind of that idea into product in a much faster, easier way. Have you already been seeing that across your portfolio companies? So we also think that it's exciting, but as well, early trend.
No, I think co-pilots have really accelerated things. I think co-pilots have really accelerated output for marketers. It's accelerated some sales tasks. Hopefully we get better at CRM, filling out CRMs for salespeople so they don't have to manually do any of this. And then for coding, for development, like I think co-pilots for software developers have gotten really good. And I think you're seeing that impact businesses. I do think that a lot of businesses are able to do more with less resources. And I hesitate to say less people. I think it's less resources. Like, I think it costs you less to be able to do a lot of things. Because what I'm seeing people do is then repurpose people to do more strategic things, or do like competitive intelligence if you're a marketer, which like never people didn't have time for, but wish they could. And so now I think people's roles are just expanding beyond the actual like create the asset into like, we can design the asset and then like co-create it with AI. And that frees up my time to be able to spend more time with customers or spend more time with like newer technology. And so I think, we're seeing impact how companies get built, but it's been more interesting to see how it's added more scope to the roles that exist today in a way that people enjoy, actually.
Yeah, that's 100%. And I've seen it even in my profession when like deep research came out, likely that happened to you. You saw on Twitter, like, this is the end of the associate and like this is going to replace. And it's not that at all. Like, yes, it has freed like some time from research, but that doesn't mean it's time that I'm not currently like sleeping or not doing something. It's time that I'm now able to either go deeper on the same research that I would have done or focus on other opportunities. So I agree with your point around really opening time to doing like higher value generating tasks there.
Yeah.
And also related to that product management experience. So you know the role very well. Is there any particular area within product management that you're excited about from the investment standpoint? I've been seeing some solutions emerge around enabling like better A/B testing, for example, but wanted to get your take if there is a particular area within that specific customer segment that you're excited to see some solutions emerge.
Well, I'll start with, yes, absolutely. From like a PM perspective, I think being able to absorb all of the customer feedback, both like qualitative, customers give a lot of feedback to customer support. Very little of that actually gets to the product manager. sometimes it's like the biggest complaints get to us, but not like the really interesting opportunity set, because there's just so much of it that we don't have time to drill through every single ticket and pull out insights, like really cool nuggets. You get a lot of feedback from sales. It's hard to tell, like, you have louder salespeople and less louder salespeople. You don't know if the feedback you're getting is just that person's being really loud about it or if it's real.
Yeah.
Right. You get lots of feedback from product marketing, actually the whole marketing team, on like, how do we position, or our competitors doing this? Why don't we have this feature? You know, it puts us at a disadvantage if we can't be in this category, and these are the features that are missing for us to be in this quadrant. And so you get all of this, and you then also have quantitative feedback, right? Like, what are users actually doing in the product? What are they clicking on? What are they spending their time in? How often do they come back to your product? Why do they come back? Right. And so you have all of this feedback, and it's your job to figure out what signals you're going to listen to help inform the roadmap. And then you also have bugs, right? Like stuff is like breaking that you have to fix. And then there's also engineering saying you have a bunch of tech debt that you need to refactor in. And so you build this roadmap and you have like 50,000 things you should probably do, and you only have the ability to do 5. And a lot of that is just like, how do you prioritize? So I think what I'd get excited about is, can something really pull out the right signals from all of the different channels and all the different noise, right, to help a PM think through how to prioritize some of this stuff. And then also look back on the things that we have built, what has actually hit the KPIs and what hasn't, and are there some learnings there? Like, that's something I wish I had much more time to do. We would launch something and be like, the KPIs are adoption, or the KPIs are like increase in revenue. And then like, we wouldn't hit the target, but we did good enough. And we never had time to retrospect on like, should we do more to hit the target? Or is this as good as it's ever going to get? Is that good enough? What could we have done differently? How does that inform the next thing we're building? Just like, never had time to do that. To what I call like, with each release, get better, right? Get better at the decision making, get better at the product building, get better at the delivery to our customers. We were just trying to get things out. And we were like, I hope it works. I mean, like, I hope it hits the target. It worked, but like, we hope it hits what we set out for it to do, like have the impact on the business we hope it would have. And if it didn't, if at all, then be like, okay, yeah, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? We'd spend like an hour doing the retrospective, we'd kill it. It would never go anywhere, and it would rarely inform the next thing that we built. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh no, you're about to make the same mistake all over again. Like, you guys should rethink this. You did this mistake last time. And so something that just helps you, one, distill out like the learnings from all the noise, and then 2, just get smarter about the things you build, taking like learnings from historical releases. I think I'd be thrilled to do that. The question then becomes market size. Like, is it lucrative? Can you build a billion-dollar revenue business selling to just PMs? And I think that's still a big question to be answered. My hunch is you have to probably go beyond product management and sell to like product and engineering and design. So like the whole R&D department, or you need to sell to like the whole like product marketing, sales, and PM. But like, you just PM is just such a small part of a business that I feel like you have to go there and then go somewhere additionally to that. Can't just be on its own.
No, that's a great take, and some area that we've been putting as well a lot of thought, and also in the terms of those feedback loops that you mentioned, that as more as you make it comprehensive from all the areas, likely that output is better. The challenge, of course, is great market, more like areas in departments involved, but how you involve all of them in a streamlined way it's the challenge there. We are at a very exciting time right now where, with the progress of generative AI, we have the potential to reshape every industry. What types of companies are getting you most exciting when investing?
I think the opportunities in B2B are pretty obvious, and that's why all VCs are running to like B2B AI. But I think the consumer experience for everything is about to get appended. Like, I am really actually bullish on consumer tech. There's a lot of really interesting early stage, like seed companies. So I'm looking for seed consumer focused companies. I think how consumers spend is going to get completely appended. I think how you shop is going to change. How you, not just for like groceries, but for clothes, and then for cars, for housing, for insurance, for financial products, like how you shop is going to completely change because now you're going to have access to be able to distill a lot of information and take action really quickly. And so I'm looking at anything and everything of like travel, clothes shopping, like everything is on the table for me. And then I also think about this idea of self-improvement, if you will. Like I think everything from wellness, but also up leveling and skill leveling, also emotional and spiritual advancement in like your knowledge and understanding of these things. I think before these things were services very heavy, like you need to have a one-on-one therapist or you need to go to church, like physical church, and subscribe to certain things. But I think over time, especially with AI, these things will become much more accessible to a lot more people. And because of that, it may change what those things look like and how people seek that kind of support. So I'm also very excited on what that looks like in upskilling, education, even K through 12, which historically is like a terrible place for venture, but it could be interesting moving forward. So I think consumer is what I think is exciting. B2B is exciting and will always be exciting. And of course, I'll look up B2B opportunities, but so does like every VC right now in the market. And I think there's a lot less enthusiasm and excitement for consumer, which is why I'm more excited about it.
And one of the things we spoke last week that I loved is how you, from that investment standpoint, are thinking like, why are things done in a certain way today? And if they were built from scratch, how could they be built today? How does that shape how you invest? But also, how do you balance that between when sometimes I encounter a founder who is like reshaping things, like not marginally, but completely changing the way things are? You have like kind of the good crazy in a way and the bad crazy, if you may call it that way, in terms of how do you distinguish both of them, and how are you thinking about that reshaping from the ground up many of the areas that we maybe today take for granted?
Yeah, look, I think it also, all of it has to be rooted in like first principles, right? I think that a lot of people are like, look at this crazy technology we can do. And then you can like, we can put together outfits for you and build them. Like, okay, super cool. Yeah. Like very cool technology, very cool thing that product does. But how do I get onboarded? Right? Do I have to like scan every single thing I own first? That's going to take me like, I don't know, 20
Yeah.
hours. Am I going to spend 20 hours to onboard in this? No. Like just, unless you're going to send me free clothing for the rest of my life. But no, like the incremental value to the cost to adopt this is just like makes no sense. So I think we still have to go back to first principles, right? How big of a pain point is this for people? What are they doing today? And what does it look like to solve that pain point in a way that for a user it seems like obvious? Like I needed this yesterday. Of course I'll onboard onto this. And the value just has to be there. And what I ultimately like to look for is what I call product market pull, like pent up, unmet consumer demand, which is like what I want to hear from users is, I needed this yesterday. Like, where has this been all my life? And so that has to exist and people have to be eager to adopt it right away. And then that shows you like there's something there. And typically the types of things that elicit that kind of response is when you give users access to something they didn't have access to before, because it was either too expensive, it was too difficult to learn how to do,
Yep.
to be able to execute on, right? Or it just like the inventory just didn't exist for whatever reason. And so like if you give them access to something they didn't have access to, then, and something they really, really, really want access to, then I think you have like the kernels of a really great product and business.
I love that first principle thinking. I feel that today with everything that's happening in technology, you sometimes get like too deep in the technology that forget to think about that bigger picture and those things that historically are the ones that have built the greatest companies. One of the other very interesting thoughts that you share with me, it's that today everyone's speaking about agents and a lot of agents taking over and humans having a backseat role in the future. But you share you have a little bit of a different perspective where you have a more human-centric perspective And you also have some very interesting thoughts about kind of the human nature and how that will also play an important role in that future that we will be building. So maybe you can share a little bit more of that thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I think we're humans. I think everyone thinks, I think in some ways we underestimate humans, and I think in some ways we way overestimate humans. So I think you underestimate humans in the sense of like, we're always going to find a way to have meaning and to connect with others. We are very like programmed beings. We have a psyche and we have emotions, and a lot of our decisions are emotionally driven, not necessarily logically driven. And so when you come at it from that perspective, there's going to be a lot of things that humans do that's really unexpected and will continue to be unexpected. I think as we automate more things away, as in a very tactical way, as we start putting in bots to do a lot of the communication on our behalf, I think we're going to start putting a premium on human-to-human connection, right? We expect that if everything is a bot, kind of like if someone sends you a note, it's over email. But if someone sends you a text message, it's a bit more personal. If someone sends you a handwritten note, you're like mind blown. You're like, oh my God, that's like super special. I think like we're going to follow something very similar with communications when it comes from a bot, purely autonomous bot versus like a human assisted bot versus like a human actually called me to talk about something. I would be like, oh, this is a premium. I'm a VIP. Like a human took the time to respond to me, right? So I think that we'll just put a bigger premium on human-to-human communication than ever before. I think we overestimate humans in the sense that we think that like we're gonna automate everything. We're like so excited to get rid of all of these things, and then we'll like have bots just completely do all of it for us, and everything will just work perfectly. And yeah, I don't see that necessarily happening. I don't think we'll deploy it perfectly. I think it trains on just human data, so all our flaws are going to get reflected in the AI, and the AI won't be able to be perfect. And so I don't know. I think this like totally dystopian view that a lot of people have of like we're going to be managed by AI, and then we'll manage other AI, so we'll just be like middle management of AI. And I'm just like I just don't think that we're going to be that clever to do that, to actually pull that off.
Yeah, no, that's something that's very interesting, like kind of the human psychology and how that affects both. One of the examples I've been seeing is kind of humans make some errors, and then you have AI, but if the AI makes some errors, like it erodes trust much faster than a human would. Or things like on voice AI, the challenge now that the voice AI models are getting better is actually cutting how you cut off the human because they overextend, and all those things around how you build products, I feel are going to be a very interesting and still unsolved area. And I personally, from what I've been seeing, I think people are not thinking enough about it, the founders that I speak with. But is that you've been having a similar experience? Is that something that you prioritize when making an investment that kind of human-centric focus?
Not necessarily. What I will say is the founders who try to sell their products by saying you can replace your whole team with this tend to have a lot longer sales cycles than the founders who are like, I will turn everyone on your team into a top 1% performer. And so like one is more human centric and the other one is like, forget the humans, we can replace everybody with bots. They're just having a hard time selling because then the manager's like, well, I hired all these people. I don't want to fire all these people. And then if it doesn't work, who do I call? And if you have a bot too, and I can't get a hold of a person, like I'm fired. And so they're like, I don't know if I buy this whole like, yeah, maybe I'll be the last one to adopt it. But the people that are like, oh my God, you'll make all of my employees a top 1 performer. That's my job. And if you can help me make everybody a star performer on my team, I'm in. Right. So like two very similar products, two very different pitches. One tends to have a much shorter sales cycle than the other. And so I tend to think of like, I'm seeing that the ones that are more human centric tend to have metrics that are in line with a more compelling startup than ones that are like, replace all the humans. You look at their numbers and you're like, oh, these numbers aren't that great. And it doesn't take rocket scientists to figure out like why.
And related to this point that you touched on sales, so generative AI is forcing or starting the conversations of SaaS companies having to rethink their pricing models. One concept that has become very popular is the outcome-based pricing, attaching the pricing to the value generated However, and you have spoken about it, that also brings a set of challenges. For example, how do you measure the extra value generated on the second or third year?
Yeah.
I imagine from your founders that you're close with, it's a question that you're asked often. How are you advising them? What frameworks do you use as well on that new possible outcome-based pricing?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that has helped us is to do a platform fee so that you still have that steady eddy, predictable revenue base. And for that, it's like, well, we're a lot of time we're hosting data, we're training on your data, we're fine tuning. So like there's a platform here that needs to be maintained and supported, and so the foundation of the thing we're then going to transact on. So that helped. Like it's easy for the customer to understand why there's a platform fee, and it's nice for the startup also to have like a predictable base of revenue. And then, yeah, the value-based pricing, you initially start off by anchoring on like what it's traditionally cost you, right? So you look at like, oh, we spent this much on an average ticket cost us $5 to solve last year with these support people. They're very expensive and awesome. So you can be like, oh, if we solve the ticket at the same NPS score as a human, then we'll charge you a fraction of that, right? Half, whatever. But eventually, like year 5, you'll forget what it costs you for humans, and that'll be like non-starters. Then what? And I think it'll eventually become like, what does it cost us to solve a ticket? Because there's some compute, and we need some kind of margin on top of that. That's like your floor. But then compute will come down, and then the question is like, okay, then what do we charge? And I think I don't have a good answer, but we'll see when we get there in 5 years.
No, but love the transparency, and the reality is there is so much we still don't know, but
yeah,
like the thoughts you have. So one of the things that with generative AI, it's a super exciting wave, but the other day I was speaking with one of the partners at my fund, which has been investing for over 30 years, and he was sharing how the level of competition today is something that we have never seen before, like as you compare it to the cloud way, or like you have 20, 40 players pursuing like similar spaces. As an investor, how do you cut through all that noise, especially when you invest at the very early seed, Series A stages where there's still really traction, and in this moment in time, like making the wrong bet can be like a very costly mistake, meaning not investing in the right player.
yeah. I think this is one of the hardest parts of enterprise stuff. You know what's funny? You don't see it that often in consumer. You rarely see two companies doing the exact same thing in consumer at the exact same time. You typically see someone with like a crazy idea that no one thinks will work. And if you believe it works, you invest in it. And then like 5 years, if it does work, there's like a dozen copycats. But it's less of a problem in consumer. Enterprise, it's hard. There's like 50 companies in every category. It's hard to make sense of it. I think you have to believe in the distribution strategy. You have to believe in the go-to-market. So at the baseline, I like to invest in a team I think is going to build the best product. So that rolls out at least 70% of the noise. And then the rest 30 is like great product thinkers. And then my next test after that is like, what's their go-to-market strategy? Why do they have an unfair advantage over everyone else? Do they have a really killer design partner or a set of design partnerships that set them up really well? Do they have some distribution partnership right out of the gate that's going to set them up at a really unfair advantage over everyone else? But they have to have some distribution unfair advantage over everyone else. And then if 5 companies have that, then it's like, who's the most well-connected in their customer base? Like, who's going to be able to call up more people and get more word of mouth going and get more customers because they just have that network. They're in the flow. They know the buyers. And then that hopefully whittles it down to 1 or 2.
The other trend I've been hearing a lot lately is founders not needing to raise as much capital because with agents, you're now able to do like much work to get that much farther. However, in practice, I'm seeing the complete opposite in most cases. I'm seeing the rounds getting bigger, like capital being raised more. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that trend that it's been going on.
Haven't seen it. What I'm choosing is like they want to spend more on other things. Or they want to ship product a lot faster, like Perplexity, right? They ship product so fast. OpenAI ships products so fast. And so, I mean, OpenAI raised a lot of money because they have to train and all that. But like, Perplexity raised a ton of money and they're just doing more with it. They're going faster into distribution. They're launching more products with it. They're building product SKUs and product, like the velocity in which they're releasing things if there wasn't AI that'd be able to like offload some of the tasks, right, they'd be unable to move that quickly. And so I think folks that are really have a great idea that it's when it works, they're going to be able to take that capital and deploy it into other parts to make the thing that works 10x bigger and better than it would have been normally. And so I think I actually think there's going to be this huge delta into like the top 1% of startups are going to be insanely well ran, and they're going to like scale, and they're going to build defensible moats really fast. And they're going to be deep and interesting moats. And then there's going to be like a really gap between them and everyone else. And so I do think AI actually makes really great talent extraordinary. And then it makes like decent talent good. And then it makes good talent marginally better. So like you just get like clustered in the middle, almost like the bottom kind of goes upward, the top really pulls out, and then you just have like a bigger middle. And that's okay. That should be fine.
But no, maybe jumping to the last part, I would love to do a quick fire round. These are like short questions. I would love your quick, immediate reactions.
Okay.
So what's something you initially got wrong about generative AI over the last 2 years, or something that you have changed your perspective about?
I didn't think consumers would adopt it as rapidly as they did. Like, I saw the early adopters. Yep, predictable, everyone in Silicon Valley. I didn't expect people's grandmothers to be writing the like Christmas cards with ChatGPT. Like that, I was like, whoa, it's only been out for 2 years and grandparents are using it? Oh my God. Like, I didn't expect that. So I got that part wrong.
That's a good one. What's one public software company you have been more impressed by how fast they are adopting generative AI, kind of outside of Microsoft, Google, Meta?
Oh man, okay, I worked at Microsoft. I was blown away about how fast they moved and how they like blew up every roadmap across the whole company to bake generative AI. So that one to me was like, oh wow. But outside of that, generative AI, I've been disappointed in, how about I'll flip it on you. I've been disappointed in Amazon, like wildly disappointed in Amazon.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah. I mean, the only where it exists is like it summarizes user reviews for me. And it doesn't even do that good of a job. I still end up reading the reviews. But I still give it something like, you put this prompt in the search box, it breaks. What do I need to buy for my child's 7th birthday that's Pokemon themed? It gives me Pokemon plates. And I'm like, man, I got like 17,000 different versions of plates. Got it. But like, it can't package up all the things I need for this party. I still have to go create a checklist of all the things I need for a birthday party and then go to Amazon and look, like, insert plates of Pokemon, cups of Pokemon, Pokemon tablecloth. Like, I still have to plan it all out. And then I have to count and make sure the count is the same as the RSVP. And I'm like, this is Amazon. You're going to die. Like, if you don't get good at this very soon, you will not survive this wave.
Oh, that's a good take.
Wildly disappointed.
We will see how the new Alexa AI features come out based on previous experiences. Not as bullish, but we'll see.
Like, how it's still not out. How is that possible? Even Siri's out. And that's way too long.
And speaking of your kids, the last question I have is, so you have several kids. What are you most excited and concerned about them growing up in this world of Gen AI?
Well, I kind of think about it how like we grew up with tech, right? When I was growing up, remember we had like an encyclopedia, and I remember in middle school I was doing some big report, and I was like, "Can I just use the internet for this?" Like, because I only have one. Like, we have the Britannica Encyclopedia at home, but then I have to go to the library and check out books. Then you have to cite them, and I'm like, "Can I just use the internet?" And my teacher's like, no, you have to learn how to like research things in the encyclopedia and in the library, because when you grow up, no one's going to pay you for being really good at, internet search. And turns out I do get paid to be really good at internet search. They were wrong. And I remember like GPS, I bought like the first Garmin. It was like a TomTom. And my grandmother's like, you're never going to learn how to get around without this thing. You have to like use a map, because then you'll always remember the street names. And she's right. Like, I will live in a city for 2 years and not know how to get to the grocery store without my GPS. But eventually I figure it out, right? And so like my kids are gonna have a lot of this, right? They're gonna get some feedback of like, no one's gonna pay you to be really good at prompt engineering. Hopefully no one says that now, but I'm sure they'll get some of it at school. Turns out like they probably will. And they're also gonna be hindered by they're not gonna know how to do a lot of these things themselves because they'll have this GPT crutch, right? Or this like generative AI crutch. On the flip side, I'm excited that then they get to spend a lot of their time like synthesizing and prioritizing, and it's going to be a different skill set, right? It's going to be like, how do I validate the information that's coming at me to see if it's true? So I hope we spend a lot more time teaching kids how to distill what's true and what's not true and what is truth. I think they'll be much better at reasoning, right? And figuring out like, what are, like, you're going to get really good at asking the right questions. Yeah. I remember I went to this like professional training early in my career, and they were like, the best executives are there because they ask the right questions at the right time. And I'm like, how do you develop that skill? Now I think like that's going to be the skill that everybody should have, not just like the top 1% of executives. So I'm excited for my kids to spend more time on like the bigger, meatier questions, and then like, how do you synthesize the synthesis of information? So you're like one order removed from it. I'm very excited about what that looks like. I also think that continuous learning will be much more accessible and much more interesting to them. I think school will be able to go at their pace. If they want to really dig into something and become an expert, they'll get access to so many more tools to be able to go deep on something they're interested in. So I'm excited. And I'm seeing more willingness from educators to get with the current times than I think I've ever historically seen, right? A lot of schools are like, well, everyone's using ChatGPT. We're going to have to append what the projects look like. We can't use the same project prompt we've used for 30 years. We're going to have to finally change what the science fair looks like. Or we're going to have to change whatever, right? And I'm like, yeah, it's about damn time. I don't think half of my homework ever helped, you know? So like, yeah, I'm glad my kids are going to get like V2 of these like assignments that are going to be more thought out and more interesting.
Gonna be exciting to see the young kids doing voice AI demos that 10 years ago was only accessible to like the top researchers. But no, Vanessa, thank you so much for the time. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks for having me.